Water damage? It's one of those crises that can hit any home, literally at any time. So today, we're going to break down what happens when water ends up where it's not supposed to be, why the clock starts ticking the second it happens, and how you can actually take charge of the situation. Let's dive in. Okay, picture this. It's the middle of the night, and you hear it, the sound of a pipe bursting. Or maybe a huge storm rolls through, and suddenly you've got a foot of water in your basement. It's that absolute nightmare scenario for any homeowner. And in that moment of panic, it's so hard to know what to do first. But what you do in those first few hours, well, that can make all the difference. Let's unpack that. So first things first, let's talk about just how common this is. We tend to think about these huge, catastrophic floods, right? But the reality is, most water damage comes from much more, well, everyday emergencies, the kind that are hiding in plain sight. I mean, just look at this list. A toilet overflowing, a washing machine hose letting go, a leaky dishwasher. These are things we use every single day. That washing machine hose, if it fails, it can dump 10 gallons of water a minute onto your floor. That's insane. So these aren't some far-off, exotic problems. They're basically ticking clocks inside pretty much every home in the country. And when one of those clocks goes off, a brand new one starts ticking immediately. Because the single most critical element in any water damage situation is time. You're officially in a race, and believe me, the stakes are incredibly high. This right here, this is the number that matters more than anything else. 24 to 48 hours. Now, that isn't just some random number we pulled out of a hat. It's a scientific window of opportunity. It's the point where a water problem that's kind of manageable can explode into a much more serious long-term health hazard. So what exactly is ticking down? It's all about mold. In a human environment, that 48-hour window is when mold spores, which are everywhere, start to wake up and grow on all that damp drywall, insulation, and even the wood framing that holds your house together. And once mold gets a foothold, the problem gets way, way harder and a whole lot more expensive to fix. And where you live plays a huge role in all this. If you're in a really dry climate, a small leak might just be a slow-motion problem that takes months to show up. But in a humid area, the moisture in the air is like pouring gasoline on a fire. That exact same small leak can lead to serious rot and mold in just a few weeks. The environment itself is literally working against you. So, with that clock ticking away, how do the pros come in and turn all that chaos back into order? Well, it's not like they're just winging it. There's a highly structured playbook that's all based on science and industry standards. Let's take a look. All right, so the very first thing a professional does is classify the water itself, because not all water is created equal. Category 1 is clean water, like from a broken water supply line under your sink. Category 2 is gray water, which comes from something like a dishwasher overflow. It's got detergents and stuff in it, so it's contaminated. And then there's Category 3, black water. That's the really nasty stuff from sewage or floodwaters, and it's seriously hazardous. The category of water dictates the entire game plan. Once they know what they're dealing with, the whole process follows 3 clear phases. First, the emergency part. They assess the damage and use powerful pumps to extract all the standing water. Second, the drying phase. This is where they use specialized gear to pull hidden moisture out of the structure. And finally, restoration. Rebuilding and repairing anything that was damaged. It's a system, and it ensures nothing gets missed. Now, when we talk about that second phase, drying, it's so easy to think, oh, I'll just open a window and point some box fans at the wet spot, right? But professional structural drying is a whole different ballgame. It's a science. It's all about controlling the environment with some pretty serious technology. And this is the gear that makes all the difference. You've got these massive truck-mounted extractors for the standing water. Then huge commercial dehumidifiers that literally suck moisture right out of the air, while high-velocity air movers create an evaporation vortex. But the real game changers? The diagnostic tools. We're talking thermal imaging cameras that can see hidden water behind your walls and moisture meters that can measure the exact water content inside wood and drywall. So how do they know when the job is actually done? How do they know a structure is really dry? They don't guess. They're aiming for a very specific scientific target. For the wood framing of your house, that magic number is a moisture content below 15%. And why is that number so important? Well, because getting below 15% is the only way to be absolutely sure you're stopping future mold growth in its tracks and preventing that slow, silent wood rot. You just can't start rebuilding until you hit that number. If you do, you're just trapping moisture inside your walls, basically setting a ticking time bomb for later. Okay, so the property is finally stable and dry. The immediate crisis is over. Now you enter the next phase, navigating all the practical stuff, which, let's be honest, almost always means dealing with insurance. Insurance can be super confusing, but here's a good rule of thumb. Your standard homeowner's policy will typically cover damage that's sudden and accidental. Like a pipe that bursts or a washing machine that just gives up. What they usually don't cover is gradual damage, like from a slow leak you ignored for months, or damage from outside flooding. That almost always requires a separate flood policy. Knowing that difference is absolutely key. So what's the one thing that can make or break your insurance claim? It's this: documentation. Photos of everything right at the beginning, detailed reports from the pros with all their moisture readings. This is your proof. Good documentation just smooths out the whole process, prevents arguments, and gets your claim approved and paid so much faster. All right, we've walked through the whole crisis, from the leak to the fix. Now let's finish up by shifting our mindset from being reactive to being defensive. What should you do in those first critical minutes? Here is your immediate action plan. First, if you can do it safely, find your home's main water shutoff valve and turn it off. Stop the bleeding. Your very next call should be to a professional restoration company. Get them rolling. While you wait, start moving any valuables you can to a dry spot, but please be so careful and avoid any electrical hazards. And finally, pull out your phone and start taking pictures of everything. Every single one of these steps can dramatically reduce the final damage. And that brings us to our final thought. We all spend a lot of time thinking about fire prevention, right? Smoke detectors, fire extinguishers. But when you think about how common, how destructive, and how sneaky water damage can be, it's really worth asking yourself, is water actually the biggest threat to your property? It's definitely something to think about. Thanks for joining us.